is not. That's forward. Got it. Okay. In two fairly recent issues of Public Library Quarterly, Jim Jukavich of the Boise, Idaho Public Library advocates what he calls progressive collection management. And he says that librarians have three opportunities frequently to reevaluate the books in their collections. As they age and decay, as patrons may challenge them, or as the librarians themselves may discover that have they been compromised in some way. And he concludes by saying that librarians therefore have two responses to those reevaluations. They can either withdraw those books or they can enrich their bibliographic records in the library catalog. Just as Leonard Hitchcock, the former collection development librarian at Idaho State University, advocates in an September 2000 article in the Journal of Academic Librarianship. Otherwise, both Hitchcock and Jukavich insist librarians are no better than eunuchs guarding the harem. Indeed, with the movement of technical services departments becoming collection management departments, librarians seem to be acknowledging a more proactive approach to their collections, where they actually take custody and responsibility even for the ideas in those collections. Perhaps without realizing it, Jukavich has applied the principles of cost accounting to library collections. We've known for a long time that the value of a book is greater than its price. For example, there is a cost of getting it on the shelf, represented by the processing materials, the barcodes, the security strips, the call number labels, etc., and all the labor that goes into processing that book. But we're growing increasingly aware that just keeping a book on the shelf also costs money. This is what cost accountants call the indirect costs of overhead. That is to say that there's lighting in the building, heating in the building, the labor of the circulation staff, the pages, all that can be divided up to add to the value of the book on the shelf. But Jukavich also reminds us that the intellectual content of the books in a library collection can decrease in value as they age, more or less according to the academic discipline of the book. And that depending on the nature of that decay, what Jukavich calls a bad book can have a second life. Jukavich's observation encourages librarians to question what they can do about the so-called bad books in their collections. Should they do anything? Are they dodging their responsibilities if they don't? Or are they violating their professional ethics if they do? And here's a list of some possible bad books, ordered roughly from bad to worst, roughly put into the attention perhaps of the author. For example, you might have a book in your collection that's outdated. The information is old. You can simply leave that, discard it, and replace it with a new edition. That's not too difficult. You can have a book that's erroneous. This is frequently the case in medical libraries that retract articles in their medical literature and therefore label those articles with retraction stickers according to the PubMed and other medical databases. Abridged books can be considered bad books as well, but they're frequently called abridged on title pages, edition statements, and there can be an edition statement in the bibliographic record. But the next categories of books can be problematic in a library. For example, what if a book has been expurgated, or even worse, Bowdlerized, such as the various edition of Samuel Pepys's colorful 17th century British diaries with the sexual and scatological parts removed. Or a book can be plagiarized, such as in the recent memory, the popular histories of Stephen Ambrose or Doris Kearns Goodwin. Should the bibliographic records say that they have been plagiarized? A book can be in violation of copyright or even libelous. In recent memory, we've had the case of a book entitled The Alms for Jihad, published in 2006. It was ruled by a British court to be libelous, and Cambridge University Press stopped publication, pulped all of its remaining copies, and begged American libraries to either destroy their copies or return them to the publisher for destruction, which the American Library Association Office of Intellectual Freedom advised libraries to not to do. Or perhaps even worse, a book could be fraudulent, particularly if fraud is meant in its legal sense of a lie intended to rob a person of property or rights. And here we have the famous case of Michael Galil's Army America, The Origins of a National Gun Culture, likely the most famous case of academic fraud at the turn of the 21st century. Librarians can take their inspiration from Charles Cutter in his Rules for a Dictionary Catalog, published in 1876, an important year for libraries, of course, not only the United States Centennial Celebration, but also the foundation of the American Library Association and the publication of the Dewey Decimal Classification System. And in Rules for a Dictionary Catalog, Cutter says that library catalogs have certain objects. Among them are to allow a patron to do a known item search or to collocate records according to the bibliographic relationships of the books they represent. But here, we're most interested in the fact that Cutter insists that library catalogs assist users in the choice of a book as to its character. I like that, the character of a book. And he goes on to list means to those objects. And here he says that bibliographic notes, or notes in a library catalog, are what assist users in the choice of a book as to its character. Cutter is more explicit in Rule 284 when he says, put into notes that information which is not given in the title, but is required to be given by the plan of the catalog. And the object of such notes is to direct attention to the best books. Here, this is a little provocative. He says that the main principles of notes is that they should be true, which is straightforward enough and easy enough to do. And he goes on to say that the notes should characterize the best books only, and that bad books should be left in obscurity. And this is where I part company with Cutter, since I agree with Chikevich that many bad books in the library collection can have a valuable second life which a library may want to point to and exploit in whatever way they can. Now, such notes are even more important today than yesterday, because if catalogs don't stand in loco parentis, they certainly stand in loco bibliothecarii. That is to say, they stand in place of librarians, particularly in the electronic environment in which catalogs are searched remotely. And so I insist that catalogs should be designed so as to make librarians obsolete. What I mean by that is that the library catalog should be able to do exactly for remote users what a librarian can do for an off-site user. This is the ideal that libraries should strive for in the design of their catalogs. Now, if this seems too controversial or difficult a task, if it makes us ill at ease to consider placing catalog notes in the bibliographic records that represent the bad books in our collections, Cutter tells us that the convenience of the public is always to be set before the ease of the cataloger. In other words, getting the readers the resources they need is our professional responsibility. And we mustn't dodge that responsibility, no matter how ill at ease we may feel about that process. Now, we're fortunate today that we have the perfect case of Michael Galil's Army America, The Origins of National Gun Culture. Here we have the opportunity to follow or to read the biography of a book in which author, publisher, reviewers, award committees, media, and even librarians have all played roles. And I think it bears spending a few minutes talking about this book. It was written by a professor, a full professor of history at Emory University, who was the director of Emory's Center of the Study of Violence. In early 2000, he was the signer of a letter with almost 50 other scholars to Charlton Heston of the National Rifle Association. And these scholars claim that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights did not prohibit a broad and intensive regulation of firearms. And these scholars urged the National Rifle Association to stop misleading Americans about the meaning of the Second Amendment. The book itself began as a 1996 article in the Organization of American Historians Journal, the Journal of American History, which article won the 1997 Binkley-Stevenson Award for the best article published in the JAH the previous calendar year. And Belil won a $40,000 fellowship at the Stanford University Stanford Humanities Center in 1998 and 1999 to write Art in America, which was published in 2000 by Alfred A. Knopf. Art in America had some startling claims. Only about 15% of county probate inventories, Belil claimed in the inventories he consulted from 1765 to 1790 in northern New England and western Pennsylvania, the frontiers, counted guns. And that America's gun culture began with industrialization during the Civil War. Now, this has had radical implications for the meaning of the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You can see how that bears some interpretation. Belil's contribution seemed to imply or said that the Second Amendment guaranteed only a collective but not an individual right to own firearms. Now, the book got extremely good reviews. Of course, there were the superlatives on the dust jacket you might expect. 5 of the 10 contributors of those comments were co-signers with Belil of the letter to the National Rifle Association, and one of these commentators, as you would expect, said that Belil was the NRA's worst nightmare. The book also received good reviews, however, in the popular press, including the 2 most important book review magazines, the New York Review of Books and the New York Times Book Review, whose author was also a co-signer of that letter to the NRA. The academic press gave the book good reviews. The Journal of American History said that Belil has attacked the central myth behind the NRA's interpretation of the Second Amendment. And even the Journal of Military History gave the book an excellent review. The book also got good reviews in the standard book trade magazines, such as the Kirkus Reviews and Publishers Weekly, and in the standard library review magazines as well, such as Booklist, Library Journal, and Choice. The book then won a couple of very prestigious awards. It won the 2001 Bancroft Prize in American History and Diplomacy from Columbia University, which came with a $4,000 award. One of the 3 award committee members was a co-signer with Belil of that letter to the NRA. And the National Endowment for the Humanities gave the Chicago's Newberry Library a $30,000 grant in order to fund Belil's research on his next book during his 2001-2002 sabbatical from Emory University. Of course, the National Rifle Association had been noticing Belil, watching Belil very closely since his publication of the Journal of American History article in 1996. You can imagine what they said. Charlton Heston said that he had too much time on his hands. And Belil, comments about Belil were posted on message boards, websites. He received plenty of emails, hate mail, hostile phone calls, and even death threats. So that 3 national historical associations defended Belil or protested Belil's harassment and defended his academic freedom. 3 of the earliest scholars to criticize Belil's work were these folks here. One was an amateur historian, Clayton Kramer, who was a software engineer by profession, but also a gun activist.
5 minutes.
James Lindgren was a law professor of the Conservative Federalist Society for Law and Public Policy Studies, and Joyce Lee Malcolm, a professional historian who had come to opposite conclusions as Belil had. And they had criticisms. They criticized DeLille's methodology of counting guns by the means of pencil tick marks on yellow legal pads. DeLille claimed to have read LDS County probate records at a National Archives facility, which was impossible. He claimed to have visited archives that have no record of his visit. He cited collections of records that do not exist, such as the San Francisco probate records lost in the 1906 earthquake and fire. And he claimed to have received viruses by email and that hackers changed his website. But as proof that those first criticisms were not just the result of ideology, politics, or sour grapes, the reviews published in the William and Mary Quarterly in January 2002 largely agreed with these early criticisms. Only one of the reviews was favorable, but 3 were critical. One said that DeLille's claim that probate inventories scrupulously reported every item in the estate is nonsense. Now, these criticisms led to an examination by Emory University, who convened a panel of historians from 3 Ivy League colleges who examined DeLille on allegations of scholarly misconduct, and they concluded that he was guilty of unprofessional and misleading work, and that his scholarly integrity was seriously in question. But the result that DeLille resigned his tenured position at Emory. Columbia University revoked the Bancroft Prize in the only time in its over 50-year, almost 60-year now history. The NEH required the Newberry Library to remove its name from the grant. Knopf stopped publication of the book, pulped all remaining copies. This became the 4th most challenged book in 2003, according to the American Library Association. And DeLille wrote a defense in a pamphlet he entitled Weight in an Even Balance, which only 11 OCLC member libraries own, although more than 2,000 own the first edition of the book. Now, the legacy of DeLille's book is going to be around for a while because it's still cited as an example of statistical and quantitative methodology in history research and course syllabi. A couple of reference books quote cite DeLille as evidence of the Civil War establishment of America's gun culture. And a couple of legal decisions have cited DeLille, although the Ninth District Court of Appeals, Silvera v. Lockyer, actually removed its citation to Army America before West printed it in the Pacific Reporter. So that citation was removed from the decision before it was actually printed. What we have here is a monumental, what has been called by Canadian professors, a monumental failure of peer review. And Clayton Kramer, an early critic, said that DeLille simply, his worldview agreed with the worldview of all of his reviewers. And so that those reviewers didn't consider the possibility that something was wrong. In other words, we have here perhaps an unprecedented near failure of the quality control process in the academic information cycle, in which librarians play such an important role. Because not only do you have peer reviewers of research ask the question whether it's worth publishing, and reviewers of publications examine the question of whether a publication is worth buying, but you also have librarians answer the question of whether a publication is worth using by researchers and students. Now, the most serious objection to notes and catalog records for banned books seems to be the ALA statement, Library Bill of Rights and statement on labeling. And here, however, you see some changes in the language from 1990, 2005, and 2009, where they seem they have removed the deleted review, the mention of review materials, and bibliographic records, library catalogs, and other finding needs. So we see here that the ALA's statement on labeling, that is to say our professional ethical standards, seems to have made a concession to library practice. The question still remains, however, about enhanced content in catalogs, so that the ALA published a question and answers on labeling and rating systems The preamble says cataloging decisions, labels, or ratings applied in an attempt to restrict or discourage access to materials is a violation of the Library Bill of Rights.
Time.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Do you want one sentence to close?
Yes, let me just show you here that record enrichment, and this is what the library, ALA is making concession to. The record enrichment is extremely biased. We'll look at a case here of a public record for Army America. There is a bibliographic note which the Ames, Iowa Public Library put regarding the rescission of the book award, the Bancroft Prize, which the book won. But you'll notice that the enhanced content of this Circe Dynex catalog pulls in the Publisher's Weekly Review, which says that although the book had an agenda, that agenda does not detract from the argument of the book, and that's the very thing which the Lil's critics disagreed with. And so the conclusion is that library catalog notes for bad books may be the only way for librarians both to uphold our ethical standards and to fulfill our responsibilities to users in 21st century catalogs with enhanced content. Thanks.